Most people think the reason they're not losing fat or they're not getting results is because they're not moving enough and they're eating too much. And there might be a little bit of truth to that. But actually, the main reason is not because they've got too much fat, it's because they're under muscled. So let me just explain to you quickly what I mean by this. When it comes to muscle, it's the longevity organ. It also acts as a metabolic sink. So think of it this way, right? Better muscle means better glucose clearance, better insulin control, less fat storage, right? It's expensive tissue. It's metabolically expensive. It costs your body a lot of calories just to keep that muscle on your body. Whereas fat, look at it as like cheap tissue. Costs your body like 2 calories per pound of fat. It just doesn't do anything other than take years off your life if you've got too much of it on your body. Now, if you look at my physique here, right? I'm not trying to be big-headed, right? But I've been basically building muscle for 20 years. And that's why it's actually hard for me to eat enough food, which is one of the best problems to have. And I love getting loads of my clients at that point as well, where they're like, look, my metabolism's firing and roaring so much, I'm struggling to get the food in. And then they're lean as a byproduct. Fat loss should be the byproduct. The pursuit of building muscle should be the main focus. And I'm going to break this down for you in terms of the mindset behind this, obviously the science, and shout out to Dr. Gabrielle Lyons as well. If you don't listen to her stuff, awesome. She breaks this down really, really well. And then just practical steps in terms of exactly what you can do to build muscle and turn your body into a fat burning machine. And obviously I'll touch on some specific client examples, right? And also, look, if you're looking to really get your metabolism roaring and to get into the shape of your life and drop body fat, 3 to 5 kilos to be precise, build muscle. Because the thing is, when I say drop fat, I don't mean drop weight on the scales necessarily. I mean drop visceral fat and fat, excess stubborn body fat they have on your body. And if you want to really build structure and routine before Christmas hits and before those Christmas parties, right? I'm actually taking on 6 people to work closely with me for my 6-week program. So you don't want to miss this. I only do this once a year. The minimum sign up for my program is normally 12 weeks. All you got to do is click the link beneath in the show notes, put your name, email address in there, and bang, we'll put you in the selection process, and then we'll ask you a few questions and see if we'll be a good fit. So don't miss out on this, ladies and gents. Links in the show notes. So let's get into first. I want to get first into just you shifting your mindset, right, and educating yourself on why you need to build muscle. When people think build muscle, a lot of you are probably thinking this already. Look, I just want to be lean, right? I want to get rid of this fat. I'm not happy with this fat on my body, Martin. I care less about being big. I hear this a lot. I don't want to be big. You're not going to be big, right? When you see people build muscle and they look better just from adding muscle to their body. And it doesn't happen fast. It's a slow process and it's hard to do. People say it's easy. It's not. It's actually much faster to lose fat. Muscle takes longer, muscle building. So people you think that have built loads of muscle and you say, oh no, or even you, this could be you. I hear this a lot. I did it before. I did some bulking and I just look bulky and, I look quite fat, basically. That's because you gain loads of body fat, right? I'm just going to say it how it is. That's because you actually ate too much and you had layers of fat over the muscle if you built any muscle, right? So just bear that in mind. If your body fat percentage didn't change and you slowly added muscle to your body, you would look way better and people would notice. And obviously you'd feel better. So you've got metabolic adaptation, right? So your metabolism doesn't necessarily slow down. I've said this myself before, but really it does. I like to say that because it's simple. Metabolic adaptation, that's what happens, right? When you've been restricting or trying to restrict food, or let's say you've got that stubborn body fat on your body, or you can't get to that next level of leanness, or you're someone who just yo-yo diets, right? And you keep losing and gaining the same 5 to 10 pounds back every year or whatever, right? And what happens then is obviously naturally over 5, 10 years, you gain more and more weight, right? In total. That's metabolic adaptation. That's why restriction backfires. So think about it this way. The body's doing what it should be doing, right? It only cares about survival. So it's great for survival, not good for losing body fat and being healthy. It'll store fat when you try and starve it. And when you do it in a way which is extreme, like most people, okay, I'm going to follow this diet or that diet. I'm going to do extreme methods when it comes to training. Look, take New Year, for example. This is why, my 6-week program, I always say to people, you probably tried to get in shape at the start of the year, right? And most people fail with that, right? Let's just be honest. It's not easy. When you wait to January, this is a good example of metabolic adaptation. What happens then? Everyone tries to change all those behaviors all at once. They try doing what they've done in the past, and it blows my mind how people expect a different result, right? Just like Einstein says. And what they do then, New Year, for example, January, right, that's it now. I've gained loads of weight over Christmas. Last year I gained 5, 10, 20 pounds. I'm going to do it. I'm going to get it off now. And they never think about keeping it off. Or they do. They think about maybe keeping it off, but that's just like a flashing thought. They just think, I want this weight off now. I don't like the number on the scales. Don't like this excess fat on my body. I'm going to go hard. And that is a terrible approach. And that's why over 90% of people gain all the weight back they lost. And not only if you keep doing that and you don't take it seriously, like people don't, because they keep doing the same thing. And the metabolism adapts better every time you do that. And it gets better at storing fat. That's what it does. Because it wants to keep you alive. So you try and restrict, you try and go extreme, bam, you're burning loads of calories. You do that for a period of time to the point where you're probably creating a big deficit at the start. Start burning out, getting tired. You didn't try and change one or two habits or working on what got you to gain that, let's say 20 pounds in the first place. People don't do that. They don't look at the way their metabolism's adapted over the years and what habits got you to gain that weight. Eating a certain way, certain behaviors, maybe eating too much ultra-processed foods, probably training the wrong way, either overtraining or doing loads of excessive cardio, and not prioritizing strength training, which I'll get to, right? So this is an example of a metabolic adaptation. The body just goes, okay, we need to get more efficient with calories. Let's hold on to these calories and store it. Metabolic restoration is when you're eating properly, you're fueling your body, you're eating to build. I eat to build. Get that mantra in your head. When you eat to build or you eat for performance, you train smart. There's a lot of nuance to that piece. If you want to, I like to say, develop your metabolism to where I'm at, and obviously a lot of my clients are at, is I like to say the metabolism is restored firstly, but then it's well developed. In other words, your metabolism, you've actually put time and effort into being healthy and focusing on habits like sleep, training smart, eating the right way to fuel performance versus restricting calories, drinking loads of caffeine throughout the day to get fake energy, having poor sleep, and doing excessive cardio or not being consistent, or all of those boxes ticked. That's most people, right? That's, if you want to be, I'll just say, if you want to be fat and you want to be out of shape, you want to be forced into painful stuff in the future, hopefully not medication, diabetes, osteoporosis, all these kind of things, just continue doing the stuff I said. It's guaranteed at some point. It's just a matter of time. So we want to restore metabolism, right? And that's what I look at with clients. So there's just the two kind of things. In a nutshell, you've got metabolic adaptation, the body adapts. And by the way, metabolic adaptation can be a good thing. So for example, you do strength training, you cut out all the excessive cardio, you eat high protein, you eat good quality foods, you get good sleep. The metabolism adapts by going, okay, great. Now, because we're sending a muscle building signal, right? Which basically means the metabolism, it's expensive tissue, right? So as you start sending that muscle building signal, the body's like, okay, we need to start building muscle to protect us from this insult in the gym, right? It's basically a bit of an insult in the gym when you're lifting weights, right? You're breaking down muscle, and the body goes, okay, we need this muscle now to protect us next time. Again, it's a survival machine. The body's an adaptation machine. That's what it does. And then it adapts the right way then, and it restores and adapts in a way where it's favorable because your body starts burning more calories by itself. And an example is my story, right? As you may know, I did bodybuilding, right? Back in 2013. I was just thinking about this recently. It's terrible for pretty much everyone to do bodybuilding, right? It's never going to be a good thing doing bodybuilding, right? Now, thankfully for me, I was in the minority of people who managed to make it a net positive to my life. But I had to go through a lot of pain and suffering with binge eating and the metabolic adaptation, right? So basically what I did is I hammered my body for about 2 years, binge eating on the weekends, restricting in the week, punishing myself in the gym instead of training smart, punishing my body in the gym because I would overeat. And I hated certain parts of my body, and that's what bodybuilding does to you as well. If you've got any body, even if you haven't got body image issues, guess what? You're going to have them, right? When you get critiqued against other physiques on stage and get told about body parts that are not good, and we don't like this body part, and you have to improve on that to do better in the next show. And guess what? You might do the next show, and there's another body part that wasn't up to scratch. You know, it's not for the faint-hearted. And all that to say, I ended up essentially just binging every weekend. And what happened was my metabolism adapted, going back to what I said. So that was the worst shape I've been in. for that 2 years, because I rebounded after shows. And even because for this 18 months to 2 years, I think I competed once or twice, but this is the aftermath of what happened in 2013. I remember it was October 2013. Let's just say rounded off the 2 years after that, probably a year and a half, actually, 18 months up until say this, I don't know, I started turning things around in 2015. My metabolism adapted, right? And it got better at storing fat. And my body was burning less because I was abusing it, right? Again, you're restricting me. I was putting myself into a big deficit in the week and then a massive surplus on the weekend of calories. In other words, eating way more than I was burning and eating way less than I was burning in the week. Terrible. It's actually good to do that if you do it like a little bit, right? One day's a little bit of a calorie deficit. One day's a little bit of a, so that can be a good thing, but I'm talking about extreme behaviors here. And yeah, I was in the worst shape I've been in. I couldn't keep abs. Now, abs are a byproduct. Like I said earlier, fat loss is a byproduct. Now it's easy. I don't even think about abs. I do check my abs in the mirror. I'm not going to lie. I still have the dysmorphia issues going on, right? I mean, I feel great about my body, right? 10 out of 10 I feel about my body in terms of confidence, but I still check the abs. It's just, it's not even... It is dysmorphia. I'm not going to lie about that. It's more of a habit that I just cemented in from bodybuilding, checking my abs for 4 years. You know what I mean? Anything you do regular, it etches into your subconscious mind. So that's basically where I was at. I couldn't keep my abs. Now it's a byproduct because I eat in a way to fuel my body. I nourish my body. I can eat a lot of food. I get a lot of nutrients in because I can eat a lot of calories. So I get a lot of nutrients in. Obviously, I'm balanced and I'm super diligent with the specific nutrients I'm getting in. I do the same with clients because you end up with nutrient deficiencies. Good luck. You're not gonna get anywhere. So you've got to look at that first. But yeah, long story short, now back then I was the worst shape I've been in. So body fat over my abs all year round. Tried to pull it back in the week and then rebounded every weekend, right? So how I switched that was, I didn't think at the time, right, my metabolism was adapted and I'm restoring it and I'm going to get a better I didn't think of all the science. I just educated myself a bit more. I actually started focusing on health instead of aesthetics. And what happened then is I actually built more muscle because I was healthier. I had less inflammation from where I was like binge eating to the point where I had major gut issues. So when I slowly overcame that, and I overcame it by not trying to cut everything out all at once, not trying to cut out all the crap that I was eating consciously. What I did, and this is the same approach I use with clients because obviously it works, I actually started adding in more whole foods. At the time, I started adding in more vegetables, actually more cooked vegetables. Started eating my protein through whole meat and single ingredient foods as opposed to the terrible, by the way, ultra processed foods like protein powders. 95% of them, I'd say even 99% of them are ultra processed. Some are worse than others. The one I used to have had like 2 of the main artificial sweeteners in there and probably about 40 ingredients. I never forget, I was sponsored by a company at the time, right? And it was called, I won't say the name of the company, but from all the bodybuilding I got sponsored, and it was called Raspberry Ripple, right? And I used to have that all the time just because it tasted great. Again, I was driven in terms of the food purely by the palatability of the food, right? Because those foods, you'll never win the battle with the ultra-processed foods. You'll tell yourself a story, but you won't. So that was kind of my story in a nutshell. And then what I did is I started focusing on health, started focusing on performance in the gym instead of aesthetics, right? Let's try and build muscle. Let's try and focus on setting some strength goals. I actually started hitting some PPs in the gym because I switched the focus to performance from aesthetics. Then I started, like I say, eating more whole foods. And naturally what happens then when you eat in, I was probably having enough protein anyway, but I changed the quality of the protein and the quality of the foods. That's first and foremost. Forget about complete proteins and all that kind of stuff. It was nothing to do with that. It was to do with the quality of the foods and even the quality of the protein source. Switched that to mainly whole foods. Started implementing things like intermittent fasting, which really taught me that actually I don't need to eat like I did when I was bodybuilding 6 times a day. Actually, I can eat twice a day. And if anything, I feel better. And I started repairing those things. And then over time, I started looking better as a byproduct. And now fast forward, 12 years, 38 years old, in the shape of my life. Long story short, physically, mentally, emotionally, you name it. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. And I want to give you an example as well. I actually just did a podcast with Lester. So you are going to get this. I think this is coming out soon. But anyway, Lester, he'll talk a bit more about this on the episode, but long story short, we restored his metabolism. We spent 6 months doing that. We spent 6 months reverse dieting, essentially, and building muscle. And he got to a point where he turned around and he said, Matt, I'm struggling to get the food in. And I was like, great. Now we can start throwing in some cuts and start trimming down the fat, so to speak. And, he's been with me 2 years later. He's still with me, and he's in the shape of his life, physically and mentally. And we did this by focusing on the whole pursuit of building muscle. He struggled with all or nothing mentality. He's an entrepreneur like myself, type A personality, right? I struggle with the same things as him. I was actually way worse than him, and way worse than most of my clients at one point, to be honest, my behaviors, food and alcohol. But with him, he turned that round, right? And he did that because he put the work in, discipline, consistent, and patience. And I had to get him, which I'm trying to get you to do now, is to shift your mindset. Had to get him to shift his mindset, because he actually said to me, look, man, you're going to make me eat more? I want to lose fat, bro. And I'm like, trust me on this. Build muscle, you'll lose fat as a byproduct, right? And that's what happened, long story short. But he'll talk more about that along the way. But that's essentially what we did. We started eating more protein. We started eating better quality foods. We actually started eating to build, right? Instead of him doing like intense types of training, and he was doing carnivore at one point as well. We got more balance with his macros, right? So he was had a little bit of fear with carbs, like a lot of us did. We bumped his carbs up. He felt better. He performed better. He recovered faster. So all these things are fine tuning, right, along the way, which is very different from person to person. Let's get into the science behind this though, right? Because I can tell you all this, but what's the facts, Mart? Now, the facts is, what is the biggest organ in the body? Skeletal muscle, by a long shot, right? We always thought it was skin. That is BS. Skeletal muscle actually takes up 40% of your total body weight, whereas skin, I believe, is like 13%, give or take. So that says enough, doesn't it? It's kind of important. Like I said, it's a metabolic sink. So look at it like an insurance policy, the way I like to explain it, right? When you build muscle, you can get away with way more calories, and it's an insurance policy for the day and age we live in, right? And the day and age we live in means we have more food available than any other time in human history, and we can get it by just whipping that phone out. You can get it within minutes. You don't even have to move to get it. On top of that, we're more sedentary than ever. So building muscle and adding muscle tissue to your body is an insurance policy. Look at it that way. And even 10 minutes of resistance training outperforms 40 minutes of cardio for insulin sensitivity. And I've had clients track this using the CGM, a continuous glucose monitor. And what they found is when they actually lifted weights, for example, I wouldn't necessarily recommend everyone do this, but even when they were doing a light band session, I wouldn't recommend doing an intense session just after eating, but even when they'd done like a light session, like with the bands, they noticed that their blood sugar levels balanced out better than anything else. Right? Better than walking, better than even like regardless of what they eat. Like if they ate that and they didn't do the weights, like certain types of carbohydrates and sugar, for example, they get a massive spike. It just went more in a straight line. It was literally black and white, the proof. And there's loads of research on that now, right? So that's what you're going to look at, right? Insulin sensitivity, and think of muscle like basically like a car machine, right? A small one's going to burn less fuel. Build a bigger engine, it's going to build more fuel, right? So I like to look at mine like a bloody Ferrari engine. You know what I mean? It's just guzzling gas like no tomorrow. But quality of muscle matters. You can have a lot of muscle, but if they're not dense fibers, strong contractions, good mitochondrial activity, right? Which is the power plants in the cells, good insulin sensitivity, then that's not going to be good, right? Low quality muscle is going to be like more fat. You get intramuscular fat, connective tissue, more fat and connective tissue inside the muscle. Like I say, intramuscular fat, less power, worse glucose control. So two people can have this, they can have the same size muscle, but completely different metabolic health, right? And obviously how you get the things I talked about in terms of high quality muscle is by lifting weights the right way, not doing it where you're overtraining, being consistent, getting adequate recovery. Don't build any muscle from training. You build it when you recover. And obviously getting good sleep and managing your stress bucket, right? Most people's stress bucket's constantly overflowing. And if they train, they're stuck in the recovery trap. There's so much nuance here, ladies and gents, but just keep it simple. If you're going to implement anything, it's focus on building muscle for a long period of time. Eat 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. Do a proper resistance training program, which is tailored for your body, the results you want, your lifestyle, how much stress you've got, and do it consistently, right? So, and don't interfere with cardio and stuff and doing any intense dieting or intense cardio fads or lots of intense cardio all the time, because you're going to interfere with that muscle building signal and that anabolic signal. You want to be sending that anabolic signal. That's pro tissue, right? Pro lean body mass, pro muscle. You don't want to be sending an anti-tissue, for lack of a better word, signal, right? Or, paring down tissue signal, which is doing excessive cardio and trying to restrict calories, right? And not having enough protein, right? If you pare down muscle, you are taking years off your life. If you pare down a significant amount of muscle, that's why we're like GLP-1s, Ozempic and stuff as well. People actually end up way worse off if they don't focus on building muscle and having high protein and getting the dose right, which is really important. So yeah, it's everything. So practical steps, there's some of the practical steps I just mentioned there. Strength training, as little as twice per week, right? You could get great results, but frequency is king. So the more often you can do it, the better. So if you could do it most days at a low to moderate intensity, that's going to be better than doing, 1 or 2 a week, for example, and not being consistent. So, but anything you do, you just got to make sure you're consistent. I would say if you could choose, if you're someone who's doing no weights, commit to twice per week. 40, it depends on which level, even 30 to 45 minutes twice per week. Start there. Full body training or body weight training if you're just starting out. If you're someone who already trains quite consistently, play with that frequency element more. Do full body 3 times per week and then maybe some light stuff on the days in between like bands. Or just do 30 minutes. If someone does 3 hours a week, instead of doing the 3 hours separately, split that to do 30 minutes every day, which is like 3 hours, right? If I've got that right. Or is that 6 days a week, right? Actually, you get better results when you follow a proper program. That frequency element, sending that signal frequently, actually speeds your metabolism more, builds muscle, and works better. But if you go overboard with the intensity and you do that every day, that's going to be the opposite results, right? You're going to be stuck in the recovery trap. Obviously, sleep well and manage stress. Walking as well, active recovery. Just like that's the ultimate cardio, like zone 2 walking every single day and get out in nature. Movement is medicine, right? If you want to add years to your life, build muscle, move plenty, get good sleep, manage your stress, get around good people, right? Relationships are everything. So yeah, stay patient. Like I said, muscle's not built. It's not built in, it's built in months. It's not built in weeks. If you look at fat loss, like my 6-week program, for example, you can lose fat fast and keep it off if you do it the right way. Building muscle takes longer, right? You're going to build muscle even within that 6 weeks, but it's not going to be a huge amount. But even with a small amount of muscle that you build, even within 6 weeks, for example, you notice it on your body because your body tightens up real quick when you build a muscle. You notice that your muscles feel more toned than everything else. So yeah, so that's basically it. Look, with my clients as well, obviously I really focus on that whole pursuit of building muscle for them to get long-term success in terms of losing fat, keeping it off, improving metabolic health, and getting into the shape of their life physically. We have to make building muscle and strength training the cornerstone of what they're doing, that whole pursuit, right? And to do that requires you to eat high protein. And if you eat ultra processed foods and poor quality foods, you're going to overeat and you're going to impact your hormones and you're not going to be able to achieve it, right? Which is why I always say, with building muscle and restoring metabolism and focusing on losing fat long term, you need to really focus on the quality of the foods that you're eating and eating 90% real foods, maximum of 10% ultra processed foods, maximum. The less, the better, right? So look, just to reframe everything, right? You're not too fat necessarily. You're under muscled, and actually, the research now points to the fact that actually, if you're bigger, you've got more body fat, but you're strong, and you've got a decent amount of muscle, you'll live longer, way longer actually, than someone who's skinny and weak. Someone who's skinny and weak is going to die younger than someone who's got more fat on their body and more physical strength and muscle, quality muscle in particular. I don't want to say by a long shot, but by quite a bit. Like muscle's called the longevity organ for a reason, and physical strength is the number one indicator to how long you're going to live, right? So look, you want to get your metabolism working for you and not working against you, right? If you're constantly doing what you've always done, yo-yo dieting, losing fat, gaining the back, your body's getting better at storing fat and it's adapting and essentially slowing down. You want it to go the other way. You want to turn it into a fat burner machine, and that takes time, my friend. But with the 6-week thing, it'll get you going. So links in the show notes. Also, metabolic quiz. That's also in the show notes, right? Now, if you want to know where your metabolism stands, you want to know what your metabolic score is and exactly what you've got to do, the specific plan for your body type and where your unique metabolism is at, because metabolism is so complex. That's why I created this quiz. Do the quiz. It'll take you a couple of minutes. It's in the show notes, and you'll get a specific plan for your body type, what foods to eat, and everything in between, right? So links in the show notes. Get that. It's free, all right? So, all right. Ladies and gents, are going to leave it there. If you're on YouTube, watch this next video here that I put, because that is going to go into more depth on some of the stuff we talked about. All right. Speak soon.